The world is watching cities burn, from Gaza to Khartoum, Kiev to Port-au-Prince. Millions displaced, thousands dead, generations broken. And the one institution built to stop this, the United Nations, watches from the sidelines. The world asks, where is the UN? But perhaps the better question is, was it ever meant to stop the powerful or just to manage the weak? This is the story of how global institutions became symbols without teeth, and why the system built to prevent war is now often complicit in letting it happen. In 1945, after the most devastating war in human history, nations came together to form the United Nations, a bold experiment in global peace. The core idea: never again. The UN Charter promised sovereign equality of all nations, collective security, and a global forum to resolve disputes before they became wars. It replaced the League of Nations, which had failed to stop Hitler and Mussolini, and with 5 victors of World War II at the helm, the United States, the Soviet Union, the United Kingdom, France, and China, the new United Nations was seen as a stronger, more realistic attempt. The Security Council was built as the engine of global peace enforcement, but it's paralyzed by a single mechanism: the veto power. 5 countries, the US, Russia, China, the UK, and France, can block any action with a single no. In theory, a safeguard for balance. In practice, a tool for inaction, hypocrisy, and double standards. Russia vetoes action on Ukraine, Assad's Syria, and Wagner activity in Africa. The US routinely vetoes resolutions condemning Israeli bombings or occupation. China vetoes criticism of its policies in Xinjiang or support for regimes like North Korea. Result? The Security Council becomes a graveyard of failed resolutions, while bombs fall and civilians die. Peace depends not on justice, but on who controls the veto. UN peacekeeping, once hailed as a success in Cambodia, Namibia, and East Timor, is now often a symbol of impotence. Why? Because peacekeepers operate under 3 crippling limitations. 1, consent of the host country. Even dictators can say no entry. 2, limited mandates. They're often forbidden to use force, even to stop atrocities. 3, funding and troops provided voluntarily by member states, often underpaid, under-equipped, and unmotivated. In Rwanda 1994, peacekeepers were ordered to stand down as genocide unfolded. In the DRC, they've been deployed for decades, yet violence continues. In Haiti, they left behind a cholera outbreak and abuse scandals. The UN is trying to police a violent world without weapons, permission, or power. International law was supposed to be blind, but in reality, it often sees only what the powerful want it to see. The International Criminal Court, ICC, has prosecuted African warlords, former Yugoslav generals, and a handful of state officials, but it has never indicted a Western leader or a major power. When it tried to investigate US war crimes in Afghanistan or Israeli actions in Palestine, the US and Israel refused to recognize the court, sanctioned its officials, and declared themselves above its authority. In 2023, the ICC issued an arrest warrant for Putin, but not for George W. Bush, Netanyahu, or Saudi leaders behind Yemen's devastation. This isn't justice, it's geopolitical theatre. The UN isn't alone, but its allies aren't doing much better. The Arab League condemned Israeli actions but took no real steps to stop them. The African Union has ambitious peace frameworks but is riddled with political interference and limited resources. NATO, while strong militarily, serves only its members and has been accused of escalating conflicts. The EU, OAS, ASEAN all reflect regional divisions and national self-interest more than global unity. Each body is a reflection of its most powerful members, and none are immune to paralysis, bias, or irrelevance. Take Gaza, over 30 UN resolutions vetoed or ignored, over 30,000 killed since 2023, mostly women and children. The UN calls it a humanitarian crisis, but the Security Council can't act. Take Ukraine. Russia, a veto holder, is both a war participant and a decision maker. The absurdity is stunning. Take Sudan, a brutal civil war, famine looming, yet the world's attention and resources are elsewhere. No major interventions, the UN lacks leverage. The reality? The UN is increasingly reduced to observer status in a world on fire. Most of today's conflicts are happening in the global south, but most of the power sits in the global north. The Security Council still reflects 1945, no permanent seat for Africa, no voice for Latin America or the Islamic world, no representation for the rising global south powers like India, Brazil, Nigeria or Indonesia. Can a 21st century world run on a 1945 operating system? The United Nations was never supposed to be perfect, but it was supposed to give humanity a chance at peace. What we have now is a system that reflects the world's worst instincts: power over principle, interests over justice, silence over action. Unless it's reformed or replaced, the UN may go the way of the League of Nations, a ghost of good intentions in a world ruled by might. This is Intel Deck, Knowledge in Motion.